Welcome to Crushing Kayfabe. My name is Jason Garish. Thank you for tuning in. Gonna have a show with not a whole lot of wrestling. Haven't been able to watch any, so we're kind of gonna focus on other things, and that's kind of the way that this format is probably going to keep going. It's gonna be a little bit less wrestling and a lot more other things kind of going on. So unfortunately, it's become way too cost prohibitive for me to watch wrestling, and just not a whole lot of stuff that I really want to get into right now. But I'm kind of unhappy that I didn't see the whole Chad Gable thing and whatnot. But it is what it is. I'm sure I'll be able to catch up on it later. But I do have a couple of things I did want to talk about. Excuse me. One of which being the death of Anthony Stewart Head. And those of you that aren't familiar with his work, he was Giles on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was in Ted Lasso more recently. Was in the West End production, West End of London, of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I saw him do some tributes. And he was phenomenal, and that was great as Dr. Frankenfurter. But apparently he had quite a life. As I guess his partner had recently died, and they were championing the cause of animals and whatnot. So it sounds like he was a really good individual away from the camera too. Which I've never met him, I don't know, but I do know about his work on the camera, and I was a big fan of his. In addition to his acting credits, he was a musician, a songwriter, a singer, which helped out on the episode of Buffy, Once More with Feeling. Him and James Marsters were basically the only ones who had ever sung before on that show. And it's one of my favorite episodes. I'm glad they did it, and some great stories online with James recanting the tales of how that all came to be and how terrified everyone was to do that episode. But he knew that him and, as he calls him, Tony, would have been fine doing so because they had experience singing. They were musicians, so they were able to do that quite well. And the segment with Spike is probably my favorite in that. So James Marster did an excellent job there. And yeah, sad to hear that. That one kind of caught me out of the blue. I didn't know he was sick. Apparently, it says he died from complications due to pneumonia. That bothers me because typically, what was he, like 71, 72, I think, something like that. Typically, you don't see people die from complications from pneumonia until they're much older, and I didn't know of any health complications he had. You used to see a lot back in the 80s from individuals who had AIDS and weakened immune systems. I don't know if he had a weakened immune system. I don't know if he had any other ailments that added to that. And that kind of bothers me, the fact that the official cause of death was complications due to pneumonia. So I don't know. That kind of seems kind of suspicious to me. But I know his former castmates and whatnot came out and did some beautiful tributes. And one movie that I did see him in was a movie called Repo, Genetic Opera. Now, if you look online, that movie's garnered some horrible reviews. I think it scored very low on Rotten Tomatoes, but I enjoyed it just because display of talent that Anthony Head was incredible in it. A range of acting ability was really shown in that movie, and he committed to that character full force, and he was really enjoyable in that movie. In addition to that, that's one of the few movies you can say that had Anthony Head, Sarah Brightman, Joan Jett, and Paris Hilton, which is completely bizarre to me. I think she won several Razzies for that, but But yeah, very interesting cast. There were some of the musicians involved, some of the guys from Slipknot, etc., were involved in that. So it's an interesting thing. If you're into really campy rock opera horror, I guess if you it's kind of, some of the stuff is done kind of in the vein of like a like a Steinman type thing. Very operatic, obviously, hence the name. And it's an interesting watch if you're ever bored. But he was very interesting. He one of his true strengths was obviously his musicianship in combination with his excellent acting skills. So that one definitely caught me off guard, and I wasn't happy about that. But yeah, rest in peace, Anthony Stewart Head. He's gonna be missed. Really, really sucks. But in addition to that, though, we did have something really cool happen. And if it sounds like I'm a little down here, it's because I'm fighting a really bad migraine. So I've got about the energy of a sloth right now. But I'll try to keep it going. But we did have Rush reunite, obviously without Neil Peart. They had played the Los Angeles Forum, and I've seen some of it. I haven't seen all of it. I plan on watching all of it, but I've seen some important parts. Like I watched Tom Sawyer, Xanadu. They opened up with Xanadu, and a couple of other things. I know Amy Mann made a surprise appearance during, I believe, Time Stands Still, which she sang on the record. That shows my age record. But Annika Niles, from what I can see, filled in brilliantly. Obviously she was nervous. She did. I noticed. I don't want to speak ill because she did. She's an extraordinary charmer, and she did an absolutely incredible job. And she killed it. She's not Neil Peart, but and she made some of the lines her own, which you can do with drumming, and it works. Important thing, obviously, is keeping time. But she played the important fills and was right on track with everything and handled it beautifully. Annika Niles did. And I was unfamiliar with her work until previous to Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson reuniting as Rush. And that in and of itself is kind of controversial because Neil was so vital to that group and so important to it. He wrote the vast majority of the lyrics, and he was such an incredible musician. I rank him as the greatest rock drummer ever. A lot of people will fight me on that with Bonham, but Bonham, as incredible as he was, musicianship, Bonham was incredible, and he inspired more kids to pick up drumming than probably anybody else in the rock field, and was incredible. He sounded amazing. He came up with some brilliant lines. Obviously having Jimmy Page produce him and get that gigantic drum sound was tremendously helpful to him, but he helped himself by just being an absolute animal on the drums and beating the tar out of them. But he came up with some brilliant stuff. But if you look at it from a technique and technical point of view, Peart is kind of head and shoulders above him. I know I'm going to upset some people saying that, but influentially, as far as influence goes, yes, Bonham influenced more people to pick up the sticks and drum, but Peart was by far just absolutely brilliant drummer, and it was sad. I did see some of the beautiful tributes that they paid, video tributes that they paid during the performance. Some beautiful stuff there. But I don't. I noticed the stage. I should say, I noticed the stage was pretty minimalistic, except for the gigantic video screens behind them, and I'm kind of seeing that a lot more often too. A lot of bands are kind of relying on that, which is fine. You know, a lot less opportunities to break your neck on stage, fumbling around in the dark. You know, but I noticed they had the large Starman logo, and you know, I didn't really see too much more. I was focusing a lot on Annika, just because I wanted to see how she was going to handle the pressure, and she performed remarkably. The great chemistry between those guys, like I said, she's not Neil, you know, she's not, and it's unfair to try to judge her against him, even though she is stepping into the shoes of him. I almost wanted them to call this band something different other than Rush because of that. I know you can make the argument that that Peart didn't join the band until the second album, and that there was an original drummer other than him in Rush, but really the classic lineup is Peart, Leifson, and Geddy Lee, you know. And I think from a writing standpoint, and from just a musicianship standpoint, from a drumming standpoint, it's just you know, Neil laid down an extremely solid foundation with that. Excuse me, you know, and like I said, gigantic shoes to fill, but I think she did quite admirably, you know. And if I could speak well, admirably, sure, let's go with that. And an excellent performance, you know, excellent performance. I think it's just going to get better with time. I did, when I saw the formal announcement that she was joining the band, I did go and watch some of her videos and listen to some of the stuff she'd done previously, and she had the resume, you know, she was very good before joining Rush, so I knew that they'd be in good hands, you know. Now, one of the names that was kind of thrown around a lot previous to her hiring was Mike Portnoy. I'm glad they didn't go that route, you know, especially considering Portnoy just not too, you know, fairly recently joined back up with Dream Theater, so I think that would have been a bad thing. I really do, and I'm glad they didn't go that route. And they kind of, Gailey, I believe it was in one interview, he kind of went over that, you know, saying that they really didn't want to go with an established drummer, and they're probably speaking indirectly about Portnoy. You know, Portnoy was a great friend of Peart's, and you know, was heartbroken when the whole thing, his whole death occurred and went down. You know, good friend of his, I should say, and would have been the obvious choice if he wasn't in Dream Theater currently, I would say. But I think they made the right choice by not approaching Portnoy, because that subdues any controversy. It would have been nice if they had a conversation with him. I mean, they don't owe him anything. They don't owe the fans anything, but would have been kind of nice for them to spoken to him and say, hey, we've decided this because, you know, and but like I said, they don't own that, but it would have been pretty cool if they did that. But I'm sure it was a hard enough decision to decide to reform Rush without that gigantic shadow of Peart looming in the background. It's going to be interesting. I think they're going to record an album. I could be wrong. That'll be very interesting because I know Leifson has been active and he's had side projects outside of Rush. He's been performing, you know, not necessarily Rush songs, but I'm not sure exactly what Geddy Lee has been doing. You know, some Rush fan I am, I guess, but I know, you know, at least like I said, at least Leifson has been keeping active musically. I know they both kind of had to shake off the rust in every interview I've seen them, they talk about that, and that makes sense because these are very difficult songs that you're trying to perform, and you've got to try to relearn how to ride the bicycle all over again when you go out and tour, especially something this massive. Now, in addition to the other kind of gorilla in the room is the other one that's been bantied about. What about Geddy Lee's voice? I think he sounded a lot better than he has in past years, and he's picking his battles and choosing which songs to sing in the appropriate range and not to, and kind of going about that in that way. I'm hoping that he's found a good vocal coach because he's obviously shredded his vocals over the years. He's kind of a nasally throat singer for a lot of things, and it's heartbreaking because I love his voice early on, but he's not the singer he once was. Is he still one of the greatest bass players? Absolutely. Man, that dude still has the chops. Listening to what I have listened so far, they just sound absolutely incredible. Life's and Gay and they're meshing well with Annika too. So that seemed to have been a very successful reunion. And one of the things that I know I'm mentioning kind of Portnoy in passing previously. Portnoy is my favorite drummer. Make no bones about that. I told story several episodes ago about an opportunity to meet him, which I unfortunately did not get to meet him. I kind of turned a little fangirl, but one thing I do want to mention is that on a wrestling note, Portnoy did mention that he was not there live. He did not watch it at the forum live, but he did have a friend that was there. And this friend happened to be Chris Jericho. And apparently Chris Jericho was sending back updates, texting, messaging, whatever, to Portnoy during the performance. And he was also, Portnoy, from what I understand, was watching it live stream. What was it, Rushcom or something like that? Rushcon. Something along those lines. They were streaming it live on YouTube, and I don't know how that all went down. I don't know what the legal implications of that are, but apparently they were streaming it live. I don't know if they had rights to. Hopefully they did. But I plan on watching that in its entirety to see what they did. I know I did watch a little bit of Red Barchetta, like I said, Xanadu, which they opened up with, and someone had said that Annika had lost a stick during that, which is incredible because I didn't hear her miss a beat on that, which is awesome. I didn't see, like I said, I haven't seen all of it, but I didn't see any of the electronic pads. I'll have to look at that again and listen to it again. Maybe they're there. I don't know if she elected to not use them, or maybe she's going to do something with that down the road. Because, Neil did use quite a bit of those extensively on certain albums, and we'll see if that comes out. She obviously did not have as an elaborate of a setup as Neil did, because he had basically 2 sets back to back that you would rotate on. So, but she did not have anything close to that from what I'd seen. But all in all, it seemed to be an extremely competent performance. Very good. Once again, like I said, it's not Neil, but very good. And if they do continue this route, and if they do plan to record, it'll be interesting to see where that songwriting goes. I'm not saying that Geddy and Alex aren't competent songwriters, but Neil was such a brilliant lyricist that he will be sadly missed. I know he will be, and that's horrible, But the new chapter in Rush, like I said, I almost for fairness to Annika, I wish that they hadn't called it Rush and called it another project, but it's got 2/3 of the classic lineup of Rush, so you almost have to do it, and that's what people are expecting, and that's what people are going to see on the marquee and go to see. You know, we've seen it a million times now. There are bands out there currently that, I mean, bands like Quiet Riot coming to mind, who have absolutely no founding members whatsoever. So I guess that this isn't that bad of a crime, then I guess, because there are bands out there doing a lot worse than what they're doing. But yeah, I'm hoping that Geddy's vocals hold up. I'm hoping that he's been getting some lessons and working on his throat. And because musically, I mean, playing wise, both him and Alex are still incredible, still amazing, you know. And when you add that fresh energy in there, it's something special. So I hope Neil's looking down, or wherever he is. I can't say he's in heaven. I don't know, you know. I know he was a Buddhist at one point, but he kind of denounced that. So I don't know what his final belief system was, but, you know. And he early on he adopted objectivism, you know, Ayn Rand philosophy, but then he later kind of rejected that. So I don't know what he believed in the end, but wherever he is right now, I hope he's looking on with pride, and he's happy and enjoying the legacy that he left, and seeing how brilliantly you know, Anka is filling those shoes, and how incredibly positive the response has been. And that's the other thing too I've noticed. I haven't seen anybody speak out negatively against her. So kudos to Rush fans, but I don't think Rush fans would. I think they're that respectful, and they're just so unbelievably happy to see Geddy Lee and Lifeson back on the road, and I think that's where it stands. I know I'm happy to see them perform, and like I said, I hope to watch the entirety of the show, and it should be good. It should be awesome. What I've seen has been absolutely brilliant. So a couple of things going on. One little wrestling tidbit in there, a little side note, but that's kind of how my weekend went, and I do appreciate everyone for tuning in. I ask that you check out the Patreon pages. You know, I've got my own personal page for Patreon, which has my music and whatnot on it, and I do have the page for Crushing Kayfabe up there, and I appreciate it if you would subscribe. You know, it's very cheap. I think it's like $1 a month for all the episodes ad free. So that's a bargain in my estimation. I think so. I mean, how many other streaming services do you pay for where it's like $10, $9, even whatever the outrageous price ESPN is charging for their ESPN Plus right now, which is the only place you can see the WWE PLEs, which I absolutely think is a crime and ridiculous, but it is what it is. But I do appreciate everyone tuning in. You know, go check out the Rush stuff. You know, check out the tributes to Anthony Head, and I'm going to end the show on that, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in. You know, check out crushingkayfabe.com, etc., and check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and all the other social media outlets. But thank you for tuning in, and God bless.